Hello viewers, today I'll be teaching about French in the Passe Compose with the helping verb etre. If you guys don't already know how to conjugate the verb etre, then I shall teach you. Here's how you do it. Let's start with the singular. Je would be sweet. And in English, that means I. Tu would be a. Then in English, that would mean you. Il and L is a. In English, it would mean he and she. Now let's do the plural. Nous would mean song. And conjugated into English, it'd be we. Vous would become été. In English, it means they. Sorry about that. They. Il, L plural would be song. And that's just the plural version of he and she. When you're doing été, make sure to always add the accent on top. Because if you don't, your teacher would mark it wrong because it's like part of the spelling. Just always remember to memorize this because you need it very much. The verb etre is very different from avoir. It isn't that hard because you just need to memorize the following. Dr. and Mrs. Vandertramp. Each letter is represented by a different verb. And doesn't really mean anything, so don't mind it. Here's what each letters mean. V for devenir, R for revenir, M for monter, R for rendre, S for sortir, V for venir, A for arriver, N for naître, D for descendre, E for andre, R for retourner, T for tomber, R for rester, A for aller, M for mourir, B for partir. I underline the beginning of each verb because that's just to show you that it makes Dr. and Mrs. Vandertramp. Also, each verb is conjugate a different way, so just memorize it. Devenir would become devenu, revenir would become revenue, monter would become monte, rendre would become rendre, sortir would become sorti, venir would become venu, arriver, arrivé, naître, fourner, descendre to descendu, andre to andre, retourner to retourner, tomber for tomber, rester for rester, aller for aller, mourir for mort, partir for partir. Like what I said earlier, etre is very different from avoir. Etre doesn't have a grammar rule. If it were avoir, devenir would be conjugated to I, but instead it became you. So just memorize the verbs and its acronym. The verb is not in Dr. and Mrs. Vandertramp, then it cannot be conjugated with the verb etre. Always remember this. This is like the grammar rule for etre. If it's not in it, it's not supposed to be there. You just need to memorize, memorize, and memorize. Here's an example. The verb is devenir. Let's start with the singular. Je suis devenu. Always add etre in its conjugated form. Then you add the verb you're conjugating. You may have probably noticed this, but L is underlined. This is because it's feminine. If it's a feminine verb, if it's feminine, you always have to add an E. If you don't add an E, that's considered a mistake. Key is just for questions. And on is just for answering. Now let's do the plural. Nous sommes devenus. Vous étiez devenus. Ils sont devenus. Elles sont devenues. If it's a plural, you would always add an S to represent that it is plural. And if it's a feminine in plural, you always have to add an E for feminine and S for plural. Let's try the verb aller. Je suis allé, tu es allé, il est allé, elle est allée. As you can see, aller is conjugated with another E. But then, if you look at the feminine, that means you have to add an extra E. This is because the E represents feminine. And the E is its conjugated form. So, even though it may look weird, always add an E. Now let's do the plural. Nous sommes allés, vous étiez allés, ils sont allés, elles sont allées. You would first write the verb etre, and then you have to write what you're conjugating. Also, you have to add an S to represent plural. Remember what I said with ete. Always add beside, or else it's considered wrong. And for L, always add an E for feminine and S for plural. No matter what you do, always add E and S if it's plural, feminine. That was just the basics of Passe Compose. But hopefully you guys learned something, and hopefully this helped you in your French homework. That's the end of the video, and please watch the rest.